What is the benefit for humans to be surrounded by trees, plants, forest? And I'm gonna answer the question, but I also want to suggest something to those who gonna watch this. What are the benefits for forests to have us nearby? What are the benefits for the plants to have us working with them together? What are the benefits for the trees to have us trying to listen to them, trying to tune in and propagate them and move them around and do everything that we've been doing since centuries, since generations? Our ancestors have done all this beautiful work. So I would like to look at this question as like two sides, because we talk about relationship, we talk about reestablishing this deep connection that is always there. It didn't go anywhere. It's just, in my mind, it kind of went a bit dormant. So it's been kind of put away because we decided at some point we can make this big experiment of, we can be without nature. Nature can be somewhere there, and we can live in big cities and do all other kinds of experiments. So I think it's really a good time to be living, because we are witnessing the kind of full circle that's coming around, and we're witnessing this possibility that we are in deep need, but also nature is in deep need. So we are in deep need because we started losing connection. We started losing touch with something real. We stopped putting seeds in the ground on yearly basis on the level of society. Of course, some people are still doing it, but it's become more industrial, and seeing the whole process. So that put us already out of touch, because we stopped participating in the cycles. But on the other hand, we also arrived to the point that we destroyed so much of the ecosystems, of biodiversity, that now I believe, I looked at it very carefully, I analyzed, and I do believe that this is the time when the nature needs us as well. So some people say, oh no, nature can kick back. We just need to kind of, step out and look what happened in Chernobyl after the disaster. Now it's the most biodiverse hotspot in that area. That's true. But I do believe that it doesn't have to be so dramatic always, and we don't always have to go through this kind of suffering. I think there is still time that we can look around and ask, where is this place that needs me? Where is this place where I can be good and I can bring the benefit? I can be the healer of this place. There is a lot of conversation about nature healing, for example, like how nature heals us and what it gives us and what benefits it gives us. It's all there. And actually, a lot of those benefits are proven scientifically. Like the whole forest bathing it's not an ancient thing. It's a completely new thing based on all the different measurements that they measure before people enter the forest. They even, they have a posts, like kind of medical posts, where they measure all the data from you before you enter the forest. Then you do the forest bathing, then you exit, and they measure it again. And they collected lots of data. They're showing that there is lots of benefits there. To breathing is different, the pressure is different, so we are calming down, we're becoming more grounded. All this pulse and different things. And then of course the sense of well-being, because they're asking people. But I believe that this is still very consumerist way to look at nature. It's very much like, oh, what does it give me? Like, what can it give me? So I'm asking, and I believe a lot of people are asking this question: how can we be the healers of the place? How can we make an intimate connection with the place, and staying there and observing cycles and participating with these cycles? How can we help heal the place, and we also heal ourselves? So I'm really moving into that path of this rediscovering, learning a lot from local wisdom, indigenous wisdom that still exists in living traditions, uh, learning from plants directly, learning from what I'm seeing, the tendencies in a place, and what this place is communicating. Like, where does it want to be? Where does it want to move? How can it be transformed, that place? Uh, and I do believe that that intentional work of deep listening, dreaming with the place, and then doing the action, doing design, of course, and then doing the action, be it earthworks, planting the trees, planting the food, harvesting all these things. I believe this is part of the healing. And for me, if we talk about our benefits, it goes from quite physical benefits, like having clean water, having good food, having really grounding, like day-to-day grounding, seeing beauty. No, seeing beauty when you wake up in this really, really beautiful place and you hear the birds. And then at night you hear other animals. And every day you see the plants, they change, they drop seeds, they drop out flowers. And it's like, wow, this is never ending. There's like cycles within cycles. And there's so much richness there and so much to learn. And I think it's totally mind expanding. Because when you start living in a place like we started living in this place now with this garden, for me is mind blowing because I keep discovering new things. There is medicine growing in my garden. I'm now, for example, collecting nettle and making tea and soup, and it's a pure free medicine there. So these are, and there are countless other physical benefits. Then I believe that it really touches us emotionally very, very deeply. We get touched when we see like a new plant, a new bird, or like the tree survived after the summer. And you guys know that, what it means to plant in the heat of Alentejo. And then, wow, we have a good percentage of survival rate, no? And we can keep going because there is already more biodiversity, more shade, more of everything. So there's a very, this good feel good. I think this is very important. And this is feeling good on daily basis. When you come back to the place and you see that place is becoming better, it's very important because in this capitalist consumerist culture, there is like not so many things that make you feel that are so tangible that you put your hand in there, and it really worked, no? Then I think on spiritual level, it's huge. And we're only starting to tap into what means nature-based spirituality. And I'm not talking about things that are quite delineated already or quite concrete, like certain practices or certain types of what they call pagan religions that kind of came from ancient teachings. I'm talking even on a very, very simple personal or community level, like how do you rediscover? How do you reconnect? And this is also very much part of my work, I consider. And quite simply, I believe that just by giving ourselves time and space to listen, that is already huge. Because then when you open that space, when you clear it, when you open that space and you set intention, whether it's personal practice, whether it's community circle, I think magic really happens there on this energetic or spiritual level, let's say. And I think it doesn't need to all happen overnight. Things come, we discover, we feel, we sense, our senses expand. Um, and then at some point, what happened to me when I came to live on the land or with the land, I just realized that the land was so neglected and so not looked after in some senses, and people did certain things that they were not aware that actually the land brought us here to also help and be kind of the healers in a way. So how can we now learn with her but also heal and do the healing, the work that needs to be done. I think when I was young, when I was like really small, like a kid, a child, I think time didn't exist. I thought time doesn't exist. And now I know for sure that it exists. But I also know that it exists like in very specific ways. So for me, time is like it's in the forest. So things that grow, that change, that die, that gets reborn, gets resurrected, like the stone that's been done to pieces by mosses and lichens. I think it's just fascinating to witness this different stratification of time, the different densities of time. I'm thinking like all the time about how we can learn about time more and more and more, because understanding time and how it behaves is one of the biggest mysteries of our life. I think, of course, there's like this very scientific, cosmic understanding of time, which is like a huge cycles. There's almost impossible to grasp with our mind. But then when we observe those cyclical nature of time in our gardens and in the forests, I believe that we can really start building that perspective of cycles within cycles within cycles within cycles, and also how non-linear the whole thing is. So, for example, we plan something and we design something and we plant it. And then something else happens after 5 years. And then the whole thing decides that certain other seeds get in, and it's like affecting the ecosystem. Or the climate change, I think it's also very much connected with time. Like, what can we do in certain areas with the shifting climate? I think it's fascinating, and it's kind of scary to think about it, but it's also interesting to observe how we can also co-design with those changes. Um, Eternal Forest proposes at least 1,000 year protection for the land. And the reason why I have that number, it's kind of symbolic number. It's kind of a little bit far out, but at the same time, I believe this is like 1,000 years is a time of a quite okay forest. It's a mature forest. Maybe it went through climax. Maybe it's reaching climax. Maybe it had several climaxes. In the forest, there is such a parameter and such a term, although I also don't like it so much because it's very scientific. And at the same time, if we think that everything is in constant transformation, then what is a climax? It's just another stage of this continuous change. I think starting just to think in 100 years is already a lot for some people, because most of the time I think we can get like a lease on the land, like 99 years or 100 years or something like this. And this is the limit we put because 100 years is like a human lifetime in the good, in a good occasion, no, if we are lucky. But then I believe that going beyond one human lifetime and engaging with several generations of people, I think gives us capacity to think bigger and wider, gives us hope, gives us a bit of different perspective, and gives us a kind of sense of stewardship and guardianship and a different kind of responsibility. And I think it's really, really necessary in the kind of conditions where we put ourselves and the system keeps putting us every day. So I think it's necessary to make this break from short time thinking and go to the long time thinking. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's very, very, very complicated and quite challenging, for example, to agree in a legal way on 1,000 year protection for the forest. Even if it's a whole community that agrees, and the community is here and today they all agree, but like, how do we take it forward, and what are the legal implications, and how the law needs to change, the human law, how does it need to align with the nature law, so we can join these two things, like what is the nature law asking for, that the human law needs to grow up to, that we can start doing the work and we can feel supported. Because in the forest world, in the world of, let's say, forest protection, regeneration, protection, and conservation, one of the biggest things is like, how do we protect those forests? And either it's a government, or in the old days it was some kind of emperor Tsar that was protecting one of the old growth forests, let's say of Eastern Europe, Bielovesia forest that I visited. There were 3 consecutive, I would say, Tsars, no, from different countries, that protected that forest from complete disappearance, because it could have disappeared many, many times. So but we don't want to think in this dictatorship term that has to be this big power above us. I think we need to start thinking, how can we make different story and how can we make different agreements? But I think the story and kind of the myth making comes first. So if we all agree that, okay, we at least imagine a different time frames for the work that we do, what kind of place we would like to come back to if we had a chance to, get reborn and come back in 500 years. What kind of place I would like to see? And if we don't do something right now, like put those trees in the ground and basically see them grow even just a little bit, that first step is not happening, then in 500 years, things won't be there for us. And I think it's nice to think about the future generations as like, we are going to look through their eyes, and walk through their body, because we're going to continue in that way. And then I was doing this experience in Monsanto Forest Park, and I came across, it's like an old pedreira, so where they extract the stone, and there was arranged like just a few stones lying around, like a bit like boulders. And I have this moment where we stop and I invite the participants to step into the rock time. So we do this little meditation. What does it mean to be in rock time? It's like a little taster of what comes after, when we when we already can embody a little bit the forest time. Okay, we can work with trees, we can see them grow, we can visit some old growth forest, we can get inspired, we can see our land shifting and changing every day. Yes, we can imagine that forest there. But the next one, even more fascinating, how do we listen to the rock? How do we listen to the stone? How do we listen to the mountain? They have a totally different time frame. And they're also like, they're growing and they're collapsing at the same time. They're like growing, but at the same time, they're like being destroyed by other organisms. And I think that being able to step into different times of different beings, I think it's one of the powers and privileges, and also one of these magical things that we could learn as humans. Because I think if we understand them better from this perspective, then we can be more compassionate. And then I think we can be more, protecting and caring and appreciating what's around us. That is not moving, at the same speed as we move, and it's not expressing life in the same way we express life. This other than human kind of time frame. Even that, creating those spaces and them becoming this beautiful forest you walk into takes a long time, but we can do so much today. I would say that first and foremost thing is to give space to nature. So if you are a community, if you're a regenerative project, if you're a regenerative development, if you're a beautiful eco hotel or retreat, and you have hectares of land, if you have 10 hectares, I would say maybe 1 hectare or something like this should be really given to nature. Doesn't need to be necessarily a forest sanctuary fully fledged with a lot of, walks inside and high density, but it can be like a mini forest, and you can enter and you can have an experience there. If you have something like 300 hectares, 600 hectares, that's a different game. And many of these projects are also thinking how to be productive, how to run a business, how to make sure that community has really good experience, that the houses are built and everything. I would still say give space to nature. So create, I don't know, 20, 30 hectares of layers of experiential space where the core will be a really dense forest that is giving for biodiversity, that is more protected, and that is more safe also for the animals because they will enter on such a scale. And the rest is like circles of different plantings and different kinds of biodiversity where slowly, slowly, slowly it can enhance itself. So definitely make sure that in your design and in your imagination there is such a space there. And then start simple. Think about what kind of experience you would like to have there for the people that are going to live there, for the visitors, for anybody who will come and stay there briefly. I am very much coming from the perspective that forest is a deeply experiential space. So for me, eternal forest, for example, the way we're designing it is layers of experience. It's like a pilgrimage that you do around the land, but also pilgrimage route that you can enter in the forest, and you have multiple trails. Perhaps you have specific artworks. You can invite artists to come and stay in art residency and create something and then go away, and then other people come. There are definitely spaces for meditation or like contemplating nature and really being with yourself and being able to deeply listen, but also to commune. There are spaces where community can gather in the forest. So imagine where you can get all the community together in a beautiful circle and do a really beautiful equinox or solstice celebration. I think that space in the forest for me, it's in my mind very much present. And then certain elements and certain spaces in that forest where you can observe nature cycles, where you can, sit and drink beautiful tea and look at the moon, where you can have your deep experience of observing a moment of orange trees blossoming or oak trees blossoming, where you really can be focused on aesthetic and emotional and spiritual pleasures of being in a really wonderful forest, and where also other beings have space to be, to thrive, plant beings, but also animal beings. So for me, it's very, very simple. Find space, give space, let it be. If you have to build today and you have to make your business plan and financial plan work, just leave that space alone. Let it already be rewild, regenerate. Try, of course, to then engage with it in some way, and then make a design and start planting. And you can plant every year a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and you will feel like it's feeling you. It's making you whole. And I very much believe that such a process, such a core sanctuary, let's say, of the community, is the core of the community, is the heart of the community. And it can be a spiritual core of some communities if they choose to. Because if you as a community come together to look after that place, to plant, to maintain, to go celebrate the equinox ceremony there and do your vision quest there once in a while, that's big, that's already a lot. And then children will find a place which they will call our forest, and they will build something there. And artists will enter and create beautiful artworks to activate that space, and it will grow. And we will see how it expands and how it evolves and how it changes and transforms. I just have this vision that my hope is that many communities will think that it's a inspiring story, and they will just take it and make it. And of course, I'm here to help and go help kind of establish it, but I'm also hoping that it will start like getting traction, and people can also do it just by themselves and join the network and say, hey, I want to be part of this network of thousand eternal forests in the world. And that's great. We all need to do it and to show how we do it and to share the knowledge how we do it so others can copy. So every village, every community, every retreat, every hotel, every municipality, every normal village with a little bit of land can have its own forest. And that forest needs to stay protected. And that's how I see that happen. And it's very simple. There's lots and lots and lots of trees coming out every year from on offer. So we just need to get together to say, hey, let's do it and do it. It's simple. There are two, roughly, let's say there are two groups of people. There are many, but let's say there are people who are doing the work, or at least they're very open and they're already attending events, they are already knowing what are the local projects, they maybe support certain projects, maybe they transition to really supporting their local farmers and buying bio food, planting trees and whatever not, or they're building projects. And there is other type of people that are maybe living quite fast-paced life in big urban cities, or not necessarily, could be actually in the village as well. That also can happen. As we used to say, you can bring the city with you. It's like, even when you're moving to a beautiful place, you can still bring the city with you. And it's like, that's not a good thing. So this second group, like how do we access them and how do we open accessible doors to them and bring them on the journey together with us without um, without pushing them away or without like sounding too much or like far too deep. You know, we cannot put all the people straight away into the deep end. We need to allow them to like walk into that whole process in a gentle way, because actually it's not because we don't want to shock anybody, because it's really a lot of work and it's quite deep transformative work, but because there are certain steps I believe that a person must be ready, or like a certain type of transformation must happen so they can enter and actually keep going, instead of just tasting it and getting out of it because, oh, it's not for me yet, it's too much. That happens as well. So in my own practice, in my own work, what I like to do and what I figured out recently actually works is doing sometimes projects in green spaces, but in urban environments. And I quite enjoy it because it's a very different type of work. I'm not in the middle of the forest. I'm still, I have to go and stay in the big city and do some kind of work in a botanical garden, which is a highly cultured space where everything is highly controlled and planted on purpose, or in a place like Monsanto, which is a little bit different. But I do believe that their priorities are different. I can access this kind of people. And I do it on purpose because they're there and I go to where they are. So it's much easier for them to go on like a 2-hour experience to Estufa Fria or Jardim Botânico de Lisboa or Monsanto Forest Park than to get them to immediately go out for like a 3, 4, 5 retreat or commit to living in a community. So I guess that with this kind of work, I'm offering a kind of a tasted transition and a few learning practices. So in Stufa Fria, what do we do? Okay, the experience is around 7 plants from all over the world. And there the plants told me, what should I do? So I had to ask them, what should I do here with you and with the people? And the idea of the plants was, well, why don't we tell you what we want? And if you open that kind of space to listen, and then you can help people to learn how to listen to us. So it was a kind of deal, no, that we made. So they teach me, and then I show that possibility to people. And so that's what we did. So first I studied with them, like I really listened to what do they have to say, what is the message of each of the plant. And then when the whole experience was written by me and put together, I offered that experience to the people. And on purpose, I don't say, I just do it. I don't say anything. There's not so much words I say before. And some people came to me after and they were like, it was deep spiritual experience for me. I never done this before. I never had an idea I could sit and listen to the plant and hear something, because we do a practice in the end. So this kind of work, it's a very minimal, it's like a minimum viable project, but it works. Same in Monsanto, same in Jardim Botânico Lisboa, same in other things that are like very, very accessible. And then slowly, what we can do, we can create retreats in the places where community is being built already, where people are already doing regeneration. And then people can come out for several days. The next time people can maybe stay a month or two, then maybe then they will consider moving either to a village, buying the house on the land, or maybe committing to joining a community, or maybe even having an idea to build a community, or to do regenerative project, or to do rewilding project, because there are many different paths. Another thing that I think really, really works, and I talk here from perspective of arts and culture, what we did with the project in Dania Velha. It was really interesting encounter. We don't call it festival. It was a gathering. So there were several artists who were invited to do art residencies in this new project, regenerative project called Idania Vida, that has elements of land regeneration, and they are probably thinking about community in the future. But there is already team working. So they invited those artists to come at different points of the year to work with the local community, Idania Velha, which is a very old community. It's like a heart. It's inside the heart of the project because all the land surrounds it. Think about certain cultural associations, interview people, and maybe co-create with people. And then there was a festival happening, gathering happening on the land, and there was a trail that we did in the land. And so every artist activated the trail in their own way and built artworks inside that space. And during that gathering, we had, I think, 250 people showing up, and a lot of people came from Porto and Lisbon. So it was really nice to see that people do have interest, and maybe it was just a punctual moment for them. They just came to visit, to experience something, but at the same time, it's like an impulse, for them to then experience something greater. And such a gathering that will happen in 2024, the Gathering of Tribes, I believe also is a great opportunity for people who are already like maybe thinking about something, heard something about regeneration, ecological restoration, and so on, can come and experience it for 5 days by joining one of the camps, either Eternal Forest Camp or TDF Camp or another camp, and they can play around, they can see what people are doing, they can find out a lot, and then they can make maybe the next step. So these are just a few examples. For me, I think a real turning point where I would really engage people quite deeply would be to engage communities, and I'm not only talking about intentional communities like eco villages or regenerative projects or settlements or new villages with regenerative element, to when we are building eternal forest sanctuary, when we're creating it, my idea is to engage the whole community. But I'm also starting to work with some municipalities, which means that I will be accessing people and communities that maybe don't do this kind of work, maybe not inside the movement so much. So I'm really looking much wider at the moment, where I can find interesting points of intersection where forest sanctuaries can be implemented, but at the same time where um, different kinds of communities can access them in the future. TDF is already doing a lot, and there's already like cycles, no, of activity. So a lot of trees have been planted. There is, I understand, agroforest there, which is more focused on kind of human well-being and supporting the community, which I believe is really, really important, because we have to eat from the forest. We have been like, not like have to, we are creatures that are eating from the forest for centuries and centuries and centuries. And only recently we have been indoctrinated to eat another kind of food that is actually not so good for us. So I really love the whole idea of agroforest, and I really support it. Huge fan, and in my land, of course, I'm also doing that mix. However, eternal forest sanctuary can be a little bit different, in the sense that it's more a place where, imagine we go to this place after we've planted and made it work, with a little bit different perspective, not so much to harvest for ourselves, but to let the forest do the work, and also show us how they do the work. So how the forest does the work when we are not so much interfering, and so not so much doing like, okay, we need to do the cutting of the fruit trees because we want more fruit, or we need to plant it in a row because it's so much easier to harvest, which is true, of course, it's easier. So we design it in a way that it is for this kind of specific experience that I would say are more spiritual experiences, where we can commune with that place, which means that probably design decisions and certain arrangements need to be so that we design and implement for that experience. And of course, I cannot say, well, we can never eat the fruit from the tree. Of course, if it's there and if the tree produces, we should, as much as any other animal should. But for me, the purpose of the sanctuary is not specifically the food production, is more like, in permaculture, there is this last zone that most projects that do permaculture ask, so where is your zone 5? I think it's zone 5. And they were like, oh, we kind of have it on the design, but we're not really doing it, or we haven't started doing it because the priority is so much on the food production. So my suggestion would be to start thinking about some kind of area where maybe it's a little bit further away from everything. Maybe you consider that area already to be very like powerful. Like there's something there that you go and sit under this tree and you're like, this is a power spot. So how can I, enhance this power spot? How can I maybe plant a few other things? How can I maybe plant grasses where people can sit directly on the grass so it's not so rough? How can I start like delineating that space? And maybe we could start activating it. Maybe we do a little meditation here every week, do some ceremony, etc. Maybe we put that trail that leads to that space and we invite artists, once a year to activate it, or once, I don't know, in 3 months. So this kind of steps, and of course from my perspective, I'm always happy to, have a deeper conversation about it, to think together what would it mean in such a project specifically, because I think a forest sanctuary, the way I see it, it also has to be really embedded properly in each project. Like, what are the needs of the project and the ethos and the spirit of the project, that when it wants to build a sanctuary, it does it in their own way, and it's a very unique thing. And then you guys would be like, oh, we were doing this and we discovered this approach, or we came up with this practice, we want to share it, and this is how I would like things to happen, that you can share with the rest of community, and other people can adopt it because it works, because you know it experientially. So let's talk. Let's think together, and yeah, I'd be more than happy to try to imagine and do some kind of deep listening. That is always kind of the first phase of before any design, like what can emerge, why, where, who needs to be involved, and you know what is the sequence of events from our perspective, but also from nature perspective. Like, what is there that already is like a mini sanctuary, and how we can expand it. I really believe in TDF. You guys are doing really, really great. I know it's can be super a lot at times, and when we are doing this kind of big work, and it has to do with the land, it has to do with building, it has to do with community, it has to do with rooting in a place. Always remember that nature is always there to support you. It's like the land has such a huge wisdom, like such huge sentience and wisdom, that my inspiration from being on this small plot of land at home is, when I am in doubt, when I'm in difficult moment, I go and ask her. I was like, hey, I have problem with water here. Like, what do I do? Please show me. And the answer is always there. She shows me. Or like, I have a difficult moment with that person, and I go and I sit by the tree, and it's like, well, tell me, like, what should I do? How can I be my best human? So always like try to find support there in your own land, and it's like a constant process of exchange, and it's beautiful. So I wish you all the best, and yeah, super happy to support.